And happy Saturday, February 22nd, 2020. And this is a very exciting day for me because I get to interview this young fellow over here, Nathan. He's one of my very favorite designers, and I would really like to be able to get inside his head and see how he thinks. I don't know, maybe that wouldn't be good, huh? So,
I wouldn't put anyone through that.
yeah. So, you can ask Nathan questions in the chat over on the side here. And if you do decide to ask a question, please start your question with the word question in all caps so it makes it stand out. If you are buying a super chat and I don't catch you right off, I'm going to really try looking for it. And if anyone else sees a super chat question, please point it out to me. I want to make sure the sound is working. So say hello. Nathan, say hello.
Hello, hello,
No,
hello.
you stop that. So let's see who's on here. We have Amber, MK. Tell me where you're from, too. So this is Amelia from New York, MK from Brooklyn, Emily, and this is Nadine from Augsburg in Germany, Evelyn from Bakersfield, Francoise from Lyon, France, Luann Hendricks from Missouri, Susan Bothwick from Victoria, Australia, Emily Rodriguez, Teresa Brown from Maryland, Amber is from Southwest Germany, Leslie Dunn is from Fort Bragg, which is in California here, up on the northern coast.
When you say Amber,
Anki
Suzanne,
from
is it Amber
Spokane,
Shivi by any
Washington,
chance?
Scott from San Francisco, and he might even be at Stitches West. I don't know. Are you at Stitches West, Scott, or are you at home? I didn't go this year. I should have gone, but too many other things happening. B. Kalaman, Fatima from Portugal, Jeanette from North Carolina, Sue from Fresno, California, Nancy Creedmoor from South Carolina, Nancy Porter from Western Washington, Bach and Knitting from Antwerp, Belgium, Catherine Continental Combined from Berlin, Cindy from Bakersfield, Kathy from Melbourne, Australia. She's away from home on vacation, holiday. Mary from Atlanta, Georgia. Emilia Rodriguez, Lucy in Houston, Elizabeth from Sweden, and on and on. So I want to welcome Nathan. Now, Nathan, suddenly I can't hear you.
Ah, can you hear me?
Uh-oh.
I'm not muted. Can everybody else hear me?
Okay, so let me try this. Okay, can I hear you now?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. It was my problem. Technology. I'd rather knit any day. Okay, so Nathan, I really want to thank you for agreeing to be a live interviewee for me. I really appreciate that. I have always admired your knitting. I have a special interest in double knitting, and you know, there's not a lot of background, not a lot of historical work on double knitting. It's very limited, and most of the information that is available is current information. There's not really any old references like there is for stranded knitting and the other types of color work. So when I first started studying double knitting, and then here comes Nathan with his double knitting. And actually one of your videos was your introduction to me. I saw one of your videos. I think my favorite video, though, has to do with double knitting, but it's the ladder back jacquard, and which really is a form of double knitting. And I utilize that in sweater pockets, which when I have you talking by yourself, I'll go get my sweater pocket and I can show it later on.
It's a genius little technique. For those people who aren't aware of what ladderback jacquard is, it's a way of creating seamless and smooth stranded patterns where you might have longer passages of one color. So if you're doing more than 5, 6, 7 stitches of one color and you don't want to be catching the float because you can see it on the front, even though we all lie to ourselves that we can't, then ladderback jacquard is a way of hiding that with a clever little extra column of purl stitches on the back, and it all sinks to the back and it looks beautifully tidy. It's amazing.
And it really comes from the machine knitting world. I think that's where you're more likely to see it on a large scale. So since I learned about it, I've paid more attention when I go into stores and look at garments that have individual patterns. I look at the inside, and believe it or not, they're using ladderback jacquard on machine knitting. Yeah, so commercial knitting.
Been guilty. I saw a lady on the Underground. I live in London, and I saw a lady on the Underground wearing a cardigan which had 3 colours in it, and I very carefully, and it was a crowded tube, I just carefully sort of nudged the edge of her coat with my elbow and was able to flap and see the inside. It was all very loose blown. She was sort of on my lap anyway, but I just wanted to see the inside. You
should go with me and my friends. I actually stop people and have them model and turn it, and I take pictures. I'm very blatant. It's not sneaky at all. That's good. I want to see what you're wearing. Can you hold it out? And I take pictures, So people don't seem to be offended by that. So remember, if you want to, thank you, Scott. Scott said the sound is good. Thank you. Always good to have good sound check. So be sure to give us thumbs up. If you are on any type of social media right now, you can also share this live stream on any type of social media. You can share it on Ravelry, on Facebook, on Instagram, anywhere where you are while it's live so more people can come. Hey, Deborah, Mountain Mom, I see you there. Nice to see you. I'll tell you a little story about Mountain Mom. She probably doesn't even know that I know this. But when she was doing level 2 of the Master Hand Knitting program, she got into buttonholes. Let me tell you, she got into buttonholes. She made this button band. It's probably like 8 feet long with every single type of combination of buttonhole that she could possibly figure out to experiment with them all. And I'll never forget that. That's swatching. That's what I like to do. Okay, so this is Nathan over here, Nathan Taylor. He also goes by the name Sockmatician. You may have seen him. He has a book, Guys Knit, and I absolutely love this book. It's not just for guys knitting. What I like about it is that he goes into detail about all the techniques. He doesn't assume that you know how to do them. He has really good pictures and explanations of how to do everything. And one of my favorite things, here's some more pictures. So it's step-by-step pictures, written instructions, picture instructions, plus he has his QR codes, which go to his videos. So he has the written instructions, the pictorial instructions, and video instruction. And, not everybody learns just by looking at a book. I, for example, like to look at written, but some people like pictures, some people like videos. Our brains all work in different ways. So he has covered all the bases on here. That's a sign of a good educator. So Nathan.
Thank you. That's very deliberate, actually. That was from the teaching that I've done. I learnt very early on that there's very little point me saying, I'm this kind of teacher, come and learn with me. When I walk into a room full of 12 students, I have to be 12 different types of teacher. What matters is that I reach that person the way they can learn, because they've paid money to be there. There's no point me butting heads with somebody and saying, but you've got to just listen to my words, when they might want to see from behind. Or in some cases, and always with their permission, I've had my arms around people and I've guided their hands so they can feel the action of what it is to do the movements and recreate it. Then they can do it on their own. And so not everybody's going to want that. Not everyone's going to need that. But you need to be able to adapt your teaching style if you're going to reach people in the right way.
Exactly. And that's what I love about teaching, actually, is you learn so much more about knitting, is because you actually have to get in the head of each one of your students and see how are they perceiving it so that you can help them get it. And so you can't say it's always done this way.
And I don't feel that my class is successful or that I'm a successful teacher if anybody goes home feeling bamboozled by what I've done. Some of my classes are really in depth, and and some of them go at a fast pace, and I warn people about that. And I always say, listen, this particular class, I call it my brain bruiser, because sometimes people are like, they're punch drunk by the end of it because I've given them a really good brain workout. But I always make sure that they always take something home with them. In here, they're all going to get a handout, but that's not really enough. I want them to have an idea of the concept and a knowledge that this is something they can do because I managed to reach them.
And
that's really
even
important.
even if they just get one idea that's a new aha moment to them, they're going to feel good about that, and it's so fun to see people get that aha moment.
Oh, it's my favorite thing in the world. I call it the light bulb moment, and you see it with people different times during the class, and different people have different light bulbs for different elements. But there's usually something in a class where every single person, something I've said will strike them in such a way that they go, "Oh, that's something I can really use." Not just a new skill, but there's something that they can really implement in their own knitting,
or
and you can see their eyes light up.
They may have seen it or heard it before, but it didn't sink in, and all of a sudden they go, "Oh, that's what that is." Yeah. Okay, so
and when I see that moment, whenever I see someone's eyes light up like that, in my head I go, "You're mine."
There's exactly. I know that feeling. There's going to be a bunch of questions over here already, but I want to start out the interview in my usual fashion, and that is, how did you come to knitting? How were you exposed to it? What was it that drew you to it? And then how did you come to double knitting?
Right, there's stages to that. I'll try and be as brief as I can because do we have to cut it short to an hour? Because I want to talk for 4 hours. I'm really excited to be here, by the way. So initially, I learned to knit as an 8-year-old boy. My sister, I have a 2.5-year-old. That's stupid. She's not 2.5 years old. She was 2.5 years old when I was born, so she's 2.5 years older than I am. My sister, known to many people on Instagram as Sockmatician, my sister Sam, she's a wonderful, wonderful human being, and she had been given a kit for a cuddly stuffed toy, and it happened to be the Pink Panther. By my uncle and aunt, Uncle Kenny and Auntie Sheila. Hello, I know they're not watching, so I don't know why I'm waving. And it was a Pink Panther, and because I was the younger brother, I always wanted to do everything my older sister did because I always looked up to her so much. And sadly, it was a kit that only had enough yarn and one set of needles for one toy, and I was devastated. My mother, genuinely devastated. I think there might have been a tantrum and some tears. And my mother, really good of her. My mother can knit but doesn't. She doesn't like to. But when we were very, very young babies, she had felt the peer pressure of I must knit for my children. So she knitted us a couple of things and hated doing it, but kept some stuff under the stairs. So she went to her little box and she brought out some very fine, dark, like really dark green, almost black yarn, and some very big, fat, chunky needles. So I knitted myself a Pink Panther who was very, very dark green and full of holes. And he's right here. Would you like to meet him?
Oh, yes.
I knitted him when I was 8 years old, and I'm so proud of him. Okay, he's a string vest in the shape of the Pink Panther. I make no apologies for the length of his neck, and I make no apologies for the positioning of his tail. But he's very charming.
Oh, cute!
I absolutely do love him. Let me just get this light over here so you can see. He's got little embroidered eyes, which are a bit wonky, and little loop on his nose. I'm not quite sure what went wrong there. And he's all full of bits and holes. But look, he's got separate pieces, a different chest piece there, and his tail's a little bit lower than you might otherwise hope. But Mrs. Dark Green Panthers had no complaints, and you can see more stuffing than knitting. But I knitted him when I was 8 years old, and I still adore him. I'm very, very proud to have him as part of my knitted family.
And what is his name?
Dark Green Pink Panther.
Oh, okay. Very cute.
Of course, he's not a dark green panther. He's still very much the Pink Panther.
Okay.
Just
He's a green Pink Panther. Yes.
Exactly. So he's very fun. And then I was drunk. He's just fallen over. Who can blame? So I had done that, and I felt that was a box ticked or a box checked for North American listeners, and I sort of moved on to other things. And it was only about coming up 9 years ago that some friends of mine who are both knitters, a male knitter friend called Sam and a female knitter friend called Julie, who started talking to me and saying, "I think you should knit, Nathan." I said, "Nah, done it, not interested." And they said, "No, I think you should. I think your brain works in the kind of way that would appreciate knitting." It's funny how other people know you better than you know yourself sometimes, because I very much said, I don't like hand knitted stuff. I feel that men have a more uncomfortable relationship with knitwear than women. I can't think of anything that I could knit that I would want to wear. And they said, "What about gifts?" I said, "I'm not that nice." And they kept bullying me, and I said, "Listen, what is it about knitting that you think makes me right for it? Knitting is all cushiony, soft, fluffy, soft furnishings, and I'm a mathematician by inclination, and I'm a scientist and logic and all that." And they said, "Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh." And they said, "Nathan, it's about attention to detail. It's about focus. It's about repetition. It's about perfection. It's about patterns, literal patterns and formulas and maths and numbers and logic and linear progression. All of the things that you should really enjoy because you are that man." I was like, "Yeah, I really am that man." But I still didn't quite believe them. 6 months of bullying, and I finally said, "All right then, teach me how to knit a sock." The only reason I chose socks was it's interesting. I did choose socks because obviously I'm now a Sockmatician. But a sock was the one thing I thought was a small, manageable project. If I don't like it, it's not going to take too long to finish it. And if I do like it, it doesn't matter what colour your socks are, you can always hide it in your trousers. And the genius of my friend Sam was, rather than give me a sock pattern and say, "Here's what you need to learn in order to be able to do this," because I could remember the basics, but I hadn't done it for 30 odd years. What he did, rather than that, was he taught me the engineering and the geography of a cuff down sock. So cuff, leg, heel flap, heel turn, picking up for gusset, gusset decreases foot, toe decreases in Kitchener. And it was because of that he gave me an understanding of the engineering behind it and the mechanics of what it was. Because if he hadn't done that, I would have followed the pattern and said, "Look, there you go, I did it."
And you would have been done.
Probably knit it again. It was largely because I couldn't find any socks that I wanted to knit.
Mm-hmm.
So he gave me a book of patterns. I won't name the pattern book. It's a very good book. There's nothing wrong with it. But I would look through and I go, "Oh, that's lovely. Oh, I don't like that detail. No, next. Oh, I don't like. No, I don't like them at all. That would be really nice if it wasn't for that. No." And I got myself through the entire book and didn't find a sock that I like. I felt like Jerry Seinfeld with his girlfriends. There's always something tiny that's wrong with it that makes it no go. And so then I suddenly thought, well, I understand from what Sam taught me what making a sock needs to be. So why don't I just make the sock I want to see?
Right.
Be the sock I want to see in the world. And that was it. That was it. I made my first pair of socks and I've never looked back.
So when did you discover double knitting?
Well, I tell the story in my, this bit could almost be scripted. I tell this in my double knitting classes all the time. There was a knitting group at a local shop called Nest that I used to go to and attend on a Monday afternoons every week. And there I was knitting my vanilla socks, because that's basically all I did. And funny thing was, people used to say to me, "You're a beginner." I said, "Yes, I've only been knitting a couple of months." They said, "But you're doing socks already." "Oh, socks are hard." I was like, "Are they?" It's just this stitch, then the next stitch, right? So the individual stitches aren't hard, so you just have to know which order to do them in. That's always been my philosophy with knitting, which I think led me on into the next bit. In walked a lady wearing a rather spectacular cardigan. It was two colours, and the all-over pattern, sleeves and round the body and round the back, was it was very big and blocky, sort of kimono style, very sort of square, but really, really sort of really luxurious and cozy looking. And it was a cityscape. So there was a road around the waist with skyscrapers and trees.
Mm-hmm.
There were clouds and birds, and I think a hot air balloon at one point. And it was absolutely amazing. Then she opened it to take it off and revealed the inside.
It was the opposite.
Now, the colours were all reversed. Because she's obviously an evil genius, she'd made sure that all her seams were completely internal, so there were no rough edges anywhere, totally reversible. But because of the subject matter and the colours she'd chosen, it gave the illusion that the outside was the city by day and the inside was the city by night. And that was it. I was hooked. My jaw fell into my sock. And I looked at her and I said, "What is this crazy sorcery?" And she said, "Well, it's called double knitting." I said, "How do I learn it?" She said, "Go home and look it up." And you know what? I'm really glad she did, because I was such a beginner knitter. If she had said, "Well, you do this, and then you do this, and it goes forward there, and the yarns go there and there and there," I'd have gone, "Oh, okay." Not really being able to picture it or take it in, but something in my brain would have been satisfied that the question had been answered, and I may have never looked at it again.
Right.
She did was she sent me home, and this is what I try to do in all of my classes. She sent me home with a thirst to know more, because she refused to tell me.
Right.
So I went home and I spent months, literally 3 months, researching everything I could find about double knitting. And there's not much out there.
No,
there really isn't.
No.
It certainly wasn't 8 years ago. There's hardly anybody doing this kind of stuff.
And that was before you and Alistair.
Yes, yeah, I think Alistair had just about started. Lucy Neatby was doing it.
Yes.
And that was kind of
That's
really.
Yes.
Emlu Barber, the book was out there, which I've heard about, but I didn't know much about that. So, and I didn't cast anything on, and it was really, really weird. I knew right from the moment she walked in with that cardigan that I was going to really, really like this. This was going to be part of my life in a big way. I genuinely, it was love at first sight, and I didn't want to learn it wrong.
Right.
I wanted to make sure I learnt lots of different people's versions of cast-ons and things, so that I could compare, see the flaws and the discrepancies, and go, oh, actually, well, if you wrap the yarn that way, you don't have to do that later on, and all of those kind of things, until it was bubbling up inside me and I couldn't stop myself anymore. I cast on my first DK project, which was a scarf I designed myself, and knitted it all in one go and never looked back. I mean, literally, I needed to do it. So
it was bursting. It was bursting out.
I learned knitting by accident because I wanted to do what my sister did. I was bullied into it by some friends, but double knitting happened upon me and I knew.
It captured you.
Totally.
Okay,
I've never looked back.
There's a couple of questions over here already, so I'm going to intersperse some of them now, and then we'll go on and you can show some of your knitting.
You can tell I'm really excited.
So this is from Round Rabbit. She says,
"Oh, hello, see.
Do you think I would be able to do double knit brioche in the Portuguese style of knitting?"
Yes. Yes, absolutely. There's absolutely no difference with Portuguese knitting or continental knitting or combination knitting or English flicking or English throwing in terms of the mechanics and the topography of what happens when you knit, only in the way that you hold the yarn. So, Nancy, as you know, in Portuguese, the yarn's going through a pin or around your neck, so it's coming towards you from the work rather than falling away from you from the work, but it's still the same mechanics. You're still going to be pulling the same loop through the same loops in the same direction. So absolutely it will. It might take me, I haven't actually done it in Portuguese to give it a go, but it's no different from double knitting, which I know can be done. The mechanics of double knitted brioche are very, very similar to double knitting itself. So yes.
So I've always thought that double knitting probably came about before brioche, because I think brioche really is someone trying to do double knitting, and they, instead of taking the yarn between the needles, they take it over the top, because really that's the only difference, you know. It was a mistake in double knitting and it turned into brioche.
It might be. It might be because I mean, there's obviously it's related to fisherman's rib, and it's related to the just knit one below. But in Holland, in the Netherlands, it comes from the whole patentstiek tradition. I don't know the chronology because I've looked and I really can't trace many origins of double knitting. But I'm sure Nancy Marchant would know more than I would about the origins of brioche. I'd be really interested to know what the earliest reference points were to see if they are two completely separate things that evolved organically,
Right.
or as you say, one came from the
So
other.
you'd have to go back. There's 3 ways to do that. How to historically find. You'd either have to find a photograph or a painting or a pictorial of brioche or double knitting with a date, a first mention of it in any sort of literature with a date,
But
or
of
the
course, it could be
artifact
called something
itself,
else.
or the
And you
artifact
never
itself.
know, because sometimes in written histories, when things arise in different places in the world, they can often come with different names. So
Yes,
it's almost impossible to cross-reference to know for sure.
right.
Um,
But that's what it
but
would
I
take.
just
Here's another question from Lisa Seifert. Nathan, is there any chance your new double brioche ebook will be published in print?
there's not no chance. There's no plans to do that at the moment. The reason for that is because keeping overheads down. I'm doing the entire book as a total one-man band. I'm going to be taking all the photographs myself. I'm going to be doing the layout designs myself, and in order to be able to have got the funding to do the project without having to ask for £50,000, for example, to get the books printed and then shipped and fulfilled, to be honest, I didn't go into doing the project because I wanted to go into publishing. I just want to get the technique out there. So for me, I'm still going to want to be a knitter and still want to be doing the designing, and I've got some on the needles right now, and all that kind of stuff. So there's no plans at the moment. However, I have become aware recently of various services that can take your ebook file and print on demand to send out.
Oh,
So
that would be good.
yeah, so there's. I'd say watch this space. Don't hold your breath.
Right. So maybe even somebody you could find somewhere where the person buys the PDF and they personally want the PDF printed. So you wouldn't even be involved with it at all. I'm sure
Absolutely,
there's something out there.
and it would be able to be printed. I'm sure. I'm planning to. Because I don't really know much about the world of ebooks yet, and I know ebook formats are not PDFs. They're things which are proprietorial to Kindle and to Kobo and things like that. And I don't, and that's deliberate to keep the security of the product in place. There will be PDFs of it available, and of course you can print from PDFs. So even if you don't have the kind of ebook reader or anything like that, then I'm sure there will be a way. It's something I'm going to look into. I just want to write the thing first.
Now, Judy is asking, what kind of classes do you teach?
Interesting question. I'm just starting to teach again. I've had a bit of a hiatus, as many of you will know, and I taught my first class back from my hiatus only yesterday, and it was absolutely lovely. So the classes that I have currently in my little stable, and I do have some more teaching commitments coming up later on in this year, and actually one as of yesterday stretching forward as far as February next year. So I'm going to be starting to pop up in lots of different places again, which is nice because I've missed it. And the classes that I do are my stock in trade, my signature class, which is demystifying double knitting, which is the beginner's guide to double knitting, and that's I deliberately don't call it beginner's double knitting. I specifically call it demystifying double knitting because I want to bust the myth that it's hard. As you know, Suzanne, it literally is a knit and a purl and a knit and a purl.
Right.
And that's the equivalent of doing the garter stitch scarf. But of course, you can take a garter stitch scarf and you can turn it into the most complex lace and cables. Yes, you can take double knitting as far as you want to as well. But the basic mechanics of it are very, very, very easy. So I want to take away the idea that people need to be intimidated by it. So that's that class. I do two classes which are actually very similar. The more advanced double knitting classes. One is called Shaping the Future of Double Knitting. and there's a pun in there. It's shaping the future of double knitting, but together we are all shaping the future of double knitting. It's not laugh out loud funny, don't get me wrong. But the colon's really important to me, and that's lots of increases and decreases, and it even goes into working German short rows in double knitting, which is actually not as difficult as you might think. It's just got a bit of twisting and turning the work, and that's very similar to my double knitted lace class as well, because obviously you think about what are the components of lace knitting. It's mostly increases and decreases, so there's a lot of crossover between those, but one is slanted towards shaping different pieces of material, and one is the decorative aspects of lace. Also, and I love the idea of the double knitted lace class. The thing that makes me excited so much about that is, although double knitted lace, there's hardly any of this stuff out there at all, it doesn't matter. You can take any lace pattern at all, and you can, if you take a little highlighter pen and draw some lines of color, fill in some of the decreases lines and some of the little patterns, and add some color to it, and then use the principles of double knitted lace to look at the knit two together and turn it into a double knitting decrease. You can take any lace pattern that already exists, you can bring it to life with color and give it that reversible two-sidedness that only double knitting can give you. And that is true for every lace pattern that's ever been written.
How cool is that?
Oh, so you can take your favorite lace patterns that by wonderful, brilliant designers who understand lace in a way that I never will, because it's not my strength, and you can sublimate their patterns. I'm not sort of trying to be arrogant about it and say, well, double knitting going to sort of dance all over other people's work. No, it's going to inform and sublimate their things, and use the creativity of two different people to bring it into something that could never be its own. I get so excited by that. I also teach a class called Knit Nerdism, which is my philosophy of knitting, which is about looking at your knitting and interrogating it and breaking it down into the component building blocks, undoing all the lies we have learned about knitting, really giving something its specificity so you can use those building blocks, put them together in any way you like, and make your knitting behave.
Right, and so that's like, there's like two far extremes in people that are knitters, okay? So there are the people who buy Vogue knitting because they like the picture on the cover, and they want to make that sweater, and they want to knit it in the exact same color, in the same yarn. And that's the only way they can even envision doing it. And they do it by just reading the directions. They don't want to see a picture. They don't look at the schematic. They don't do a gauge swatch. They just follow the directions, not even thinking about why they're doing something or what they're doing. And hopefully their garment turns out. Then there's on the far extreme, which is where all of us are, people in this group, is we want to know, why does it do that? How can I make it do what I want it to do?
Yeah. Why is it doing that when I want it to do that?
Exactly. And so what do you need to do? And what are all the little itty bitty details that make a big difference in the finished project? And they see a picture and they go, oh, I can do this and I can do this, and I'm going to add a button band, and maybe I'll put some pockets in, and I'm going to put a cable design over here, and they make something that's their own. That's the group of people that we're in right here.
And I love that group of people. I'm in that camp very definitely. But I also love the other group of people, and I love knitting for accommodating all of those things. I've often talked, because people look at some of the things that I've created. I'll talk to you through some of this pile here in a minute. But people look at some of the things I've created and just go, "Oh my goodness, it's so complex. It's so I could never even imagine doing something like that." And I say, "Well, what's your particular style of knitting?" And they say, "Oh, I love cables." I go, "Okay, so to the person who's only ever knitted a garter stitch scarf, doing cables is witchcraft."
Right.
And yet, to the person who's never picked up needles, the garter stitch scarf is the most crazy kind of sorcery in the world. There's whatever you want from knitting, whatever you want it to be, you can find something that suits your level. And if you just want the mindlessness and mindfulness of knitting a vanilla sock time and time again, using the yarn to do the sort of expressing for you, then in different colors and different textures, then that's perfect. You've found your craft. But if, like me, you kind of restless, and I think I might be a bit ADHD. If you want to, in fact, I'm almost certain I am. If you want to push boundaries or interrogate knitting or discover new things that people haven't done before, that's all there for you as well. And it's still all knitting.
Okay, here's another question from MK, and she's asked it sort of twice in different words. The first question she asked, do you knit math or products? And then she says, is it the math of creating an item that keeps you interested?
Yes, and more. The matician part of Sockmatician definitely comes from the word mathematician. I don't have any further education in that respect, but I do know the stupid phrase I like to say is I'm a mathematician not by education but by inclination. My brain is definitely wired that way. I see the world as grids and numbers. I really do. It's almost like a synesthesia. And it's only recently, in the last couple of years, and much more so over the last 8 months or so, that I've realised that what I think makes me a little bit different from a lot of people is that the human condition is to try to do stuff because of the great unknown at the end, death, that awful thing. And we fear death. I actually realise I don't fear death as much as I fear chaos. For me, chaos is the greatest type of hell that I can imagine. So I've always been a bit of a control freak. I am a bit CDO, which is alphabetical, the way it should be. Old ones are the old ones, but genuinely I am, and I've realised that all of that is because I'm trying to apply logic to the chaos of the world around me. Because if there is a formula, if there is a grid, a structure, something that I can rely on and depend upon, then I don't need to fear the chaos that would ensue otherwise. So that's where my love of maths comes from.
But death is the ultimate chaos.
Yeah. Well, is it actually? I look at it as the ultimate peace from chaos.
Maybe, but yeah. So okay, so more questions here. This is from Margot, and she says, with regard to your fabulous moon phase scarf, how much experience with double knitting will I need? I received my wool, thank you.
Yes, and I believe, Margot, you've bought it in the same colours that I've knitted mine in. You've got Delavery and Bruton, haven't you? Shall I get it while we're talking about it so that people know what I'm talking about? So this is a pattern which will be in the Sockmatician's Double Knitted Brioche book. If I may just jump back a second and explain what that is. Obviously, brioche is the enfant terrible, stitch of the millennium, as I like to call it, and became utterly ubiquitous over the last 5 years or so. I looked at brioche and I like it. I love the structural engineering, the mechanics of it. I love it. It's 3D, it's sculptural, it's really, really wonderful. It's really tactile, squishy, warm, bouncy. It's got so much going for it. But I'm also a lazy person, and I didn't like the idea of having to work every row twice. For those of you who've never done brioche before, I'm assuming, knowing that the viewership that follow you, Suzanne, I'm sure most people probably have, but I won't assume. If you haven't done it before, then you use one colour and you work every second stitch and you slip the ones in between while giving them a little yarn over of the colour as you go along. Then that's not the end of the row. You have to slide the stitches back to the beginning of the needle, pick up the second colour, and you work the stitches which were not worked on the last round and give a yarn over to the other ones in between. So the net result, I realised, was that at the end of 2 passes, every stitch has been worked and every stitch has been given a yarn over in the opposite colour. Well, I figured, because of my double knitting background, I thought, well, why do you have to do it in 2 passes? Surely there's a way of working the two together. There absolutely is, but I used to call it 1 pass brioche. It's not, because the fabric that gets created, certainly the way I do it, is not the same as traditional brioche.
It's a little bit different. Mm-hmm.
There's some subtle but very important and very vital differences, actually, to how the yarns interact with each other. I'm not going to give too much of that away because it is the stuff that I'm writing a book about, and I want to be able to sort of unleash that onto the world. However, one thing that people do notice about double knitted brioche rather than traditional brioche, double knitted brioche is done in 1 pass. So first of all, it halves your knitting time, and secondly, because it's a form of double knitting, and because it is a form of double knitting, absolutely, you can transition very easily and seamlessly from one technique to the other. So into double knitting, into sort of mild garter stitch, or into double knitted brioche. You can work them all across in the same row very easily, which gives rise to a pattern that looks a bit like this. So I've given this scarf, I'm going to drop down there. I've given it a faux fringe. So this is a syncopated brioche version. So if you can see what the two stitches here, they're suddenly in between the black stitches here. So that's just like syncopated brioche, but it's done from the double knitted brioche.
Yeah, syncopated.
But then I've got these moon phase sections. Now these panels, which travel all the way across the scarf, and the moon gets more and more.
Oh, I love it.
And then we get to the center one there, where it's half, and then as we travel along there and there, we get to a total eclipse style moon, the black moon at the other end.
Wow.
Thank you. Those are done in true double knitting. So what's the blue moon on the black side is the black moon on the blue side, on the other side. So, and just like double knitting, where there's no color changes, you can pull the two sides of the moon apart. So I've got the blue bit there and the black bit there. You've knitted a little bag, but that's just because that's a flat disc of no color changes. But what you get with the double knitting and the double knitted brioche is this wonderful uniformity. Let me just actually bring that light a little bit further nearer to the lens here, so hopefully you can see that a bit better. You get this wonderful uniformity in the brioche, which it looks much denser. The row gauge is more compressed than traditional brioche would be, and it's very see the black diagonal lines there. They're very uniform and they line up very nicely next to each other. The way that they don't always do quite the same way in traditional brioche. It's a much different fabric.
It looks like there's less of a difference in the stitch gauge between the double knitting and the brioche than there would be from standard double knitting and standard brioche.
Well,
because the brioche would be almost twice the double knitting.
There's shenanigans going on there to account for that. Proprietorial shenanigans, I have to say. You're absolutely right, and I can show that with this pattern, which is also going into the book. This is called a cuff muff, because it's a hand muff with a cuff on it. So you can have it like that, and you can just put your other hand in there like that, or it's got a drawstring that you can pull it tight and make it like a massive mitten. So you could have two, but exactly what you were saying, there is zero change in stitch count between there and there.
Right.
This is 20 pairs of double knitted stitches, which I just started working into those as double knitted brioche, and this is also 20 pairs of stitches.
Right.
So you can see the gauge is massively different, and it's perfect. I mean, it's like an Elizabethan sort of doublet and hose style.
Oh, it's very cool.
Beautiful way to end a sleeve, actually, if you had a garment made from this fabric, which I do plan to do at some point, and then you wouldn't need to do any decreases at all. You literally just make the cuff like that.
Right.
That is the same number of stitches per round as that. I know it's hard to believe. So obviously double knitted brioche uses up a lot more yarn than the same number of stitches in double knitting will, because of all the yarn overs, but because it's so much wider and so much more spread out, this knits up in no time at all. I was working on this for less than 3 weeks, and it's about 8 feet long, and it's a breeze. It's so easy to
I can visualize that in a solid color and one of those long color changing. You know, that would just be stunning.
Absolutely. The County long color change yarn.
Yes.
They're wonderful.
Yes. So there's some more questions. There's some more questions, and you have much more knitting. And we have unlimited time. There's no cutoff. This is from Cindy. She says, if we missed out on the Kickstarter, how do we get in line to get a copy of your ebook when it comes out?
The best thing to do, I guess, in terms of finding out when it's going to be available, I'm hoping it's going to be sort of I did say originally it was going to be end of May, beginning of June. It's more likely to be the end of June now, just because there's an enormous amount to do, and some of the projects are going to be much bigger, which are going to take me much longer to knit. This one, for example, is going to be the start of a massive poncho, and clearly I've got some way to go. But the best thing to do, I guess, would be to sign up for my newsletter. So if you just head to sockmatician.com. Wait on the homepage for 5 seconds and a thing will fly in from MailChimp and you can just give me your email address. I only send out about 4 emails a year when I've got new patterns and things out, but that's definitely going to be where I'll be announcing all of this stuff. So if you want to be sure not to miss out, that'll be the way to do it.
Okay, and here's another question. This is actually a really good question from Polly Edwards. She says, and I'm going to put it over on the screen. She says, does double knitting always produce super warm products? I live in the South in the U.S. and mostly need to make light sweaters. You could use cotton or fingering weight yarns on larger needles. It doesn't have to be real compressed.
No, it doesn't at all. So to answer the question, does it always make warm fabrics? It will always make a fabric which is slightly warmer than twice as warm as its single-faced counterpart. So if you're using lace weight yarn, normally if you were knitting something like a sweater which was all in lace weight stocking stitch, for example, would be the best comparison, at a very fine gauge, that diaphanousness would be doubled up because it literally is 2 layers of fabric. But it will be slightly more than twice as warm because there's 2 layers of fabric. There'll be an insulating layer of air in between the two.
Yes, so the air trapping.
So it will be warmer than its single-faced counterpart just by dint of the fact that it's twice as warm. But you can always offset that one, as Suzanne exactly says, with some cotton or some linen or something like that, or some other plant-based fibers, tencel or something would be much, much cooler. Bamboo would not be too bad, I guess. But also by just making it at a lighter gauge. You can always do that.
This is from
you might want to think of cardigans, because with a sweater, the idea of double knitting is that you do get the reversibility.
Right.
So if there's going to be a side of your garment which remains private, there's probably not very much point doing it in double knitting.
Right. This is from Jeannie Byron. Do you have any online classes?
I don't. No, I don't. I've been in a big sort of flux over the last year, trying to revamp my career in lots of different ways. And one of the things I have considered is selling an expanded version of the classroom handout online as like an ebook download for people who can't get to any classes I've ever taken in person. I haven't got around to doing that. I'm still unsure of whether I will or not. I'm going to be doing more classes in person, and I like to reach people. I like to get my hands on people.
Let me tell you what I do. And this is part of it, these interviews. I do tutorials on Ravelry, and mostly sweater tutorials, but or color work or this or that, but they're lengthy. And I write them up. They're often 60 or 70 pages long. It's like writing a book. I have support videos for every aspect. And then I do weekly, on Wednesday afternoons, I do live streams on that tutorial. So people can ask me questions and we discuss it. And I have guests on, like if they want to know how to measure somebody that's different sizes, I bring my friends on with a variety of sizes, and we measure everybody and see how would you make adjustments based upon this and that and the other thing. And it's really kind of fun doing the live streams. There is the risk, though, that boo-boos happen in live and you can't go back and fix them, or you know what I mean. And I do have my moderators.
You have a bit of a potty mouth, Mrs. Bryan.
But I have a question myself, and I know several people here from Bakersfield. That's where I live, is in Bakersfield, California, which is about halfway. We're about an hour north of Los Angeles and about 4.5 hours south of San Francisco, to give you a perspective where we are. We would love to have you come to Bakersfield. we could probably entertain you quite well. You know,
I'm sure you could. I have no doubt about that.
There's some really cool places around here. Like we have the Sequoia National Park, you know, that has the giant redwoods that are over 3,000 years old and some of the largest trees on the earth. Then we have the beautiful Pacific Ocean, you know.
I came very close to seeing the Sequoia National Park in 2017. Ben and I, my husband Ben and I, we took a road trip with two friends. In fact, Sam who bullied me into knitting, he and his partner, Matt, the four of us got in a car. We drove from San Francisco to New York.
Wow.
And it was amazing. We spent 3 weeks doing it, and we from San Francisco. We went straight out to Yosemite, and that way. We had to make some culls to the list, but one of the things we desperately wanted to see was the Sequoia National Park.
Right.
So we were kind of near you, not too far.
Well, if you ever decide to come to the United States again, be sure to include Bakersfield on your itinerary. It would be wonderful. Okay, so let's see. Let's go through some more of your knitting. What's next on your pile?
What's next on the pile? Well, the one thing that has become my signature shawl, which I would be remiss not to include, is a pattern that I still haven't written up 7 years on. It's mostly written up, and actually I snagged it yesterday and pulled a great big thing out, and when I was trying to put it through, I actually snapped one of the yarns, so I do have to do a bit of a fix on this, but I'll show you. If it unravels a bit, it unravels a bit. It's this shawl here, and it's become definitely my signature piece. I wear it at most yarn shows and most classes, and it's all double knitting, and it's got a lot of different techniques in it. So let me try and get it closer to the camera so you can see. So there's lots of stuff going on. It's a center tab beginning, which most people would call a garter tab, but I can't do that because it's double knitting and there's no garter stitch in. So I think a center tab is a much more universal name, and so that's what I'm going with. So it starts here. After I cast it on and did that. is a teaching tool. That sounded and then then it sort of works outwards this way with increases along the wingspan and down both sides of the spine. So it's a very traditional construction, but there's lots of things which are not traditional. So you're looking at that side. If you've never done any double knitting before, the thing about it is that when you turn things over, all of the colours get reversed. So this is 100% reversible, but now you can see it's mostly green where it's mostly orange.
Beautiful.
We've got bobbles. Thank you. We've got bobbles here. So the joy of the bobbles in double knitting, of course, you've got a choice. Usually a bobble sits on a background of the same colour.
Right.
Whereas you've got the option, you could do that, but you could change things up and have a green bobble on an orange background. And if I pinch it like that and turn it over, it's backed by an orange bobble on a green background.
Right.
That's fun. Then we've got some lace techniques as well. So we've got this section here is lace techniques, which if I pull this lamp up here and show you, you can see there. You can see yarn overs as you'd expect to see.
Yes.
So the yarn overs and creases forming holes all the way through as the lace works on. But then there's something I discovered you could do. This is also yarn overs and decreases, but there's no holes. There's no holes at all. You can't find holes anywhere. So you might think he's cheating. There's no holes on the other side, but you would be wrong. There are holes on the other side, and again,
isn't that cool?
Through.
It makes it look embossed.
Yeah, and I like to think of this as like a stained glass window effect. You get to see the colour of the other side of the fabric coming through like that. I'm not going to lie, it's a horrible technique to do. It requires a 360 twist of the yarns for every yarn over. So by the end of the row on a shawl this big, listen, as a male knitter, I can tell you it's not much fun having your balls in a tangle.
Now, can I ask you, when you started knitting that, did you know what the whole piece was going to look like, or did you make it up as you went?
It wasn't exactly make up as I went, but it was planned in stages. So I would get to the end of one section and think, what do I feel it needs to be next? And then I would plan the next section, chart it out, and knit it. And so it was done. Yeah.
Yes.
So you've got all of those things, and then finally there's also different textures, because most people think of double knitting as purely stocking stitch, but here we've got some sections where we've got reverse stocking stitch showing through as well. These orange bars, it's all pearl
Pearls.
bumps. You can see that there.
Oh, very cool.
There you go. Of course, on the other side, it's the green stitches, which are the pearl bumps.
And you could even put some cables in there and stuff, you know, if you wanted to.
So the cables are here.
Oh yeah, there you go.
So the very end of the shawl has this cable pattern, and again on the other side you've got the orange on the green. Not as somebody has actually only yesterday someone said, was that crochet done afterwards? Like, no, that's actually, it's a 1/1 cable where I twisted the front stitch in both cases and the back stitch to give it that. And the reason why that's fun, I think, is what I love to say about double knitting, you know, if you really want to get me going, just push the button and say, talk about double knitting, and I'm off. What I love about double knitting is it breaks the rules of other types of knitting, where every knitting technique, people favour things. So people love their fair isle, people love their mosaic knitting, people love their cables, their lace, all different, or just textures, knits and pearls. They're all kind of limitless. But they do have their challenges. They do have their limitations. For example, in Fair Isle and stranded knitting, you are limited to how many stitches you can do of one colour. You are limited by the fact that the back doesn't look as nice as the front. Double knitting takes all of those limitations in every technique you can think of and says, Pah! I'm going to take your limitation, throw it over my shoulder. I'm going to do it better. I'm going to do it more easily, and I'm going to do it reversibly and with colour. So you've got 2 colour cables. So you don't even need a pearl bed.
Right.
Usually, cables on a pearl bed to make them stand out. I've got colour.
Right.
I've also got the opposite colour on the other side. Do you remember what Ginger Rogers said to Fred Astaire? You should try this backwards and in heels.
Right. Exactly. There you go.
Double knitting does it backwards and in heels. So for example, when we're talking about the lace stuff, there's limited lace on there, but if you're really looking to push the boundaries of what double knitted lace can be,
oh
then
my
you're
goodness,
looking like this.
Wow.
So again,
is that in your book? Is this in your book?
No, this is pure double knitting. There's no brioche in here at all, but it's all yarn overs and lacy things like that. But then, of course, lace, up until double knitting came along, has always been a one-colour medium. It's always been a one-sided medium. But look at this. Turn it over, and it's just as beautiful on the other side, and all the colours are reversed.
So where is that pattern available?
As soon as I get the time. There is something awful that happened with this scarf. I was knitting it on the way back from San Francisco, and it's got a rather unusual shaped end. It comes to a point like that. You can see I haven't even woven in the ends. It comes to a point like that. And I was knitting it on the plane. I had 8 hours, and I knitted the whole of that V-shaped point. And I was working from what I had charted out all the stitches, but I thought I knew where all the yarn overs had to go. But as I was knitting it, I realised that I had to make amendments. I hadn't taken certain things into consideration, so I was diligently noting on my iPad, drawing in little symbols on the PDF. When I got home and went to retrieve that PDF to write up the changes, none of my notes had stuck.
Oh my gosh!
I have no idea what the end of this scarf is. So I've cast on the requisite number of stitches, and I'm going to have to re-knit it and carefully notate and start it. But at the moment, I've got a book to write, so that one's parked.
Yeah.
But it is this is what I was saying earlier about how double knitted lace is really going to bring the world to life, I think.
Well, your color choices there.
Thank you. This is Bollmeiser yarn, but it's just a standard leaf pattern. But because I've got colour, I can bring the veins of those leaves to life in a way that ordinary standard lace knitting just can't do. Double knitting literally is the best technique in the world. It takes anything and it says, I'm going to do it backwards and in heels.
Because if you tried to do that with stranded knitting, you wouldn't have any lace effect because of the stranding.
All the yarn overs.
So you could get the same color kind of effect, but you wouldn't get the lace effect. Right, exactly.
I proper yarn over holes all the way along here. Everything.
I love
I
that.
will. I don't. Thank you. I don't tend to block my double knitting. This, for example, has never been washed or blocked or steamed or pressed or patted or wet or anything.
Right.
Double knitting comes off the needles this flat.
Right.
And that's because the two sides of stocking stitch, both wanting to curl, cancel each other out.
Right.
Physics takes care of the work.
Balance each other. It balances. Now,
I'm filling up my desk. Hang on, let me just throw this over the camera. There you go.
Yes. Now, there was something else. You showed me a hat yesterday. Where's your hat? And I saw another hat you showed me before.
This one is from the book.
Yes, that's so cute.
So there we are. This is double knitted brioche, so this one will be in the book. The patterns for the book are as yet unnamed, and there's a very good reason for that, because one of the rewards that I offered on the Kickstarter fund was the opportunity for people to name the patterns. So a couple of those got sold. So the joy is I've promised those people that they will have carte blanche to choose when they're all knitted. I can say, which one do you want to name? And so I don't know what to call them yet.
Right.
But again, the joy of this, one of the things talking about the double knitting always takes the challenges and the restrictions of another technique and throws it out the window. Well, the restriction with brioche is A, it takes twice as long as it should, not anymore, but B, it's not two-sided. It is two-sided, but it's not fully reversible. Now, I've spoken at length with Nancy Marchant about this, and she's always said, and she's absolutely right, and I absolutely think this is a very valid argument. She said, but Nathan, I've never looked at it as a two-sided fabric. Just like Fair Isle, you don't design Fair Isle to look nice on both sides, so you don't worry about it.
Right.
And she's always felt like that with brioche, and it looks okay on the back. But if you've got two lines of rib coming together in a decrease that look like that on one side of brioche,
it doesn't look the same on the other side, right?
Not so with double knitted brioche. Double knitted brioche, if you can see how the nexus of those decreases come together there, when I turn that inside out, it's exactly the same on the inside. And and if you can see here as well, the decreases that create this pattern, exactly the same.
Because in standard brioche, the two sides are not. It is a reversible design, but they are not mirror images of each other.
Exactly. And what also is true when you have, most of the time in brioche, when you have a decrease, there's always a stray color blip as the two things come together. Well, that doesn't have to be the case, and certainly not true in double knitted brioche. Can you see there? There's absolutely no color blip at all. And if I turn the same section over on the pink as well, there's zero color blips at all. It's just clean color.
Right.
So double knitted brioche,
it's tidier. It's tight. It's less chaotic.
Thank you. Yes, and it's so easy. This took me two evenings to knit.
Yeah.
Quick and easy. Now the fact is as well, the different techniques. These two bands here of the pink pearl stitches, that is taking us out of double knitted brioche and back into double knitting, but it's reverse stocking stitch double knitting. So the yarns are held and kept apart. So while it's purple pearl stitches on this side, on the inside they're green pearl stitches. So you really can mix and match and interchange, and I'm really hoping that double knitted brioche is going to be my legacy.
I think it will be. I think it will be. And you have to do your kickoff in Bakersfield.
I can't promise that no one else has thought of this stuff before, but no one's really documented it.
I haven't seen it. You're going in a different direction, because I am a fan of Lucy Neatby and of Alistair, and and the three of you are going in completely different directions from each other, from the same base information. So that's what's so wonderful. And I had Alistair on here a few weeks ago, so he went.
Yes, only this evening I saw the link. I need to watch that.
Yeah. So and he's an interesting fellow too. So let's see, what else do you have to share? People want to see what's on that stack back there.
Okay, so more patterns from the book are these two. Again, this is double knitted brioche. This is a cowl. And the texture of this makes me
Wow.
want to cry. I love it so much. It
Wow.
absolutely is. Actually, it should be the other way up, though, so the V's are pointing upwards. But that, you might be surprised to learn, that's not cables.
Wow.
Those crisscrosses are actually a decrease out of which comes an increase.
Right, exactly.
If you can see, it's
So
actually an
it
SSK.
keeps the lines going across.
Yes,
Yes.
totally. So there's no,
There's no
you can actually
crossing.
see it. Yeah,
It's
you
like
can actually,
traveling
it's going to,
stitches.
yeah, almost, yeah, but they come together as a decrease, and then the two stitches come out of it.
Right.
And but I love what it does to the direction of all the yarn overs. They look like
Right.
little flames inside there.
That's just
And
awesome.
again, because it's double knitted brioche and not brioche, it is 100% reversible. So you get the
Wow.
two different choices of how you want to wear this. And it, I'm obsessed with this technique.
Wow. Now, when
There's
you
a matching
finish the end
patch.
of the round, like when you're working, just a second, when you're doing a round
Yep.
and you get to the end of the round, sometimes it's tricky in two-color brioche to not have a break. You know, you got to keep one yarn in the front, move the other yarn to the back. Is that what you do?
It's I just split them around the needle.
Right.
Um,
Right. Exactly.
because they are actually both going to come to the front, but I split them around the old needle,
Uh-huh.
and then when I reset, then I bring the inside yarn to the outside
Right.
of the new needle
Right.
and
And
start
that's
it.
what keeps it from having a jog. Yes.
It's no jog, it's completely continuous. So you've got the cowl, but you've also got its matching sister pattern, which is the hat, and that crown just brought me to my knees when the maths worked out right. It's
Ew,
just
that's
so
just so
beautiful.
beautiful.
And again, being double knitted brioche, it is 100% reversible and just as lovely on the inside. So you could mix and match. You could have it the pink side out and the grey side out, or both together,
Right.
one way or the other.
Beautiful.
I can't tell you how exciting double knitted brioche is. I want it to revolutionise things. Now, this is not to. I never want to be arrogant enough or have the hubris to say that mine is better. Mine is different. And these are the things that it does well. And that's the way I always want to couch it. Brioche is a beautiful stitch, and there are lots of reasons why people might want to do two passes. Maybe someone has sort of hand pain problems and they don't manipulate two strands of yarn very well. Maybe they're a beginner and they just think, well, one at a time is good for me. There's lots of reasons why people might want to do traditional brioche, and that's brilliant. What I'm offering is, here's something different, and it brings with it other things to the table.
Hold on just a second. One lady, Deborah, she's going to need to go in a second, and she's the one that asked about the Sanquhar gloves.
Yeah. So here's
Deborah,
the
do you
scarf.
have just a second so he can show this?
So, Deborah, this is my Sanquhar scarf, and it's an odd pronunciation. It does look like Sanquhar, but it rhymes with tanker, and it's these beautiful centuries-old patterns I've put together into one sampler scarf. But the tradition, the heritage of them is, I'll have it on display so you can see. The heritage of the patterns is they're usually stranded patterns, which are worked at tiny, tiny gauge into gloves, full-on gloves, not mittens so much, but fingered gloves. And the gloves work in such a way that the same number of stitches, because of the way these patterns are grids of 11 squares, rather than sacrifice the pattern for the sizing, it's all sized by needle. So the tiniest child's glove and the largest man's glove will have exactly the same number of stitches in, and that blows my mind. So that's all done, and sometimes, usually they're on like 1.5 millimeter DPNs. This is not knitting for the faint-hearted. I have one half-completed Sanquhar glove, which I'm never going back to. But I wanted to bring these patterns together. So I went to the Tolbooth Museum in Sanquhar itself, which is in southern Scotland near Gretna Green, and I was granted access to their archives, and it was so thrilling for me. They allowed me to photograph all of their samples going back about 200 years for these ceremonial gloves. So I was able to, every single one of these These were not charted from books, these patterns. I have charted these from the actual museum samples. And again, being double knitting, because I wanted to give a new slant to the old traditions, being double knitting, you get the difference of the other side, which you would never see.
Oh my goodness.
So it's absolutely beautiful. The gloves always have a corrugated rib cuff.
Mm-hmm.
Now that is corrugated rib, although it's hard to see the black stitches which drink all the light. They are pearl stitches, but if I turn it over, you can see the white ones are definitely pearl bumps there. And this decorative corrugated rib, which is lovely. So I've used that as the faux fringe. Then they always have a salt and pepper band, which has the initials of the wearer written into it. So people's gloves are initialed in the gloves themselves.
And did you reverse it on the other side? Let me see the other side.
Funny you should mention that. NJG on the back is NJG on the front as well. That's, again, one of the beautiful things that double knitting can do that no other knitting technique can give you.
Right.
Now, some people call that two-pattern double knitting. I don't think that's accurate enough because it's the same pattern twice. It's not two patterns.
It's just not synchronous. I don't know.
Yeah, some people call it non-reversible double knitting. Well, I would argue that's really wrong because it's more reversible.
Right. So what do you call it?
Non-mirrored double knitting.
Non-mirrored. Yes.
I think that covers all the bases. It's the same pattern. It's not mirrored on the back.
Right.
And it really, really does. So I call it NMDK, non-mirrored double knitting.
But it doesn't even have to be that. I told you I wrote that article for a magazine on double knitting, and the scarf that I made started out with plain double knitting. And then I added, so it was just one color on each side, so people got the hang of double knitting. And then I put some bubbles.
Yeah, nice.
And then I put, on one side it had arrows going straight up, and on the other side it had zigzag arrows.
Oh, lovely.
So it wasn't even non-mirrored. It was, I called it asynchronous. Two different designs.
And I would agree that. Because I'm a pedant, I've thought of all of that. And I still think it counts as non-mirrored because one side is not mirror of the other.
Right.
Like this hat.
Oh, that's so cute.
So this hat has a completely different pattern on the inside. So we've got the crown that looks like this, and again, the decreases on this crown are decreases like you might. I'm going to ask you this question. You're possibly one of the only people in the world that I would guess may have come across this type of decrease before, but I'll talk to you about that in a second. But if you can see what nods towards the Sanquhar patterns, which I am obsessed with. You can see what that pattern is on the outside. Let me flip it for you and show you a completely different hat on the inside.
Oh, wow.
The crown bears no resemblance at all to the other one.
Right.
And this tiled pattern across here is so completely different from what we're seeing on the inside. But it is one hat knitted in one piece. It's not two hats sewn together, as a lot of people think it is. This hat's called Reinvention. And there's two reasons for that. I'll cheekily let you know. So it's reinvention because if you get sick of one side, you can reinvent it and have the other one. But it was the first pattern I released in September after a little bit of exile. So that was my reinvention.
That was your reinvention. That was your saved up,
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, I can't just design one hat. I've got too many things.
Right.
I know, I'll put two in one.
It's gorgeous. You are a genius. You really are a genius. It's amazing.
I've got something else here which is kind of fun, which I'd like to show you. It was one of the ideas that was going to be the moon phase scarf, but I realized that it was incorporating stuff that wasn't truly double knitted brioche at all. So I'm going to come back to it another time. I've actually pulled it off the needle here, but it's the moon phase scarf with intarsia. So we've got
nice, right.
Got the double knitted brioche around the outsides, just as we have with this one, but completely different colours working in the centre. And one of the reasons why I didn't want to go much further with it was that. That's not much fun.
Right.
And the reason was actually the reversible intarsia is not actually possible in double knitted brioche because double knitted brioche is not two layers of fabric, it's one layer of fabric with the stitches staggered and splayed out.
Right.
So you can't hide the intarsia twist the way you can in double knitting. You can do intarsia twists in double knitting and all the twists, both sides are on the inside between the two layers. That's perfectly possible. But the workaround that I was working on with that was to actually do the twist, to have a ring of the dark colours around the outside, which was double knitting. So I actually did the twists within the double knitting. So it didn't really count for the book, but I think it was a fun experiment.
So Nancy Marchant does a thing with double knit brioche, where she'll have a brioche section, then she'll have a garter stitch section in between. But because she's doing a single passes, the garter stitch is a 2-color pass, and you can't really do that with this, though, right? With the you can do the 2-color garter.
You can. It starts to border on labour intensive, but I've been practicing it in my hands. So what you do is there's with the, because I've never done the single, the 2 passes, right, in the garter. Do you knit and then purl and purl,
yes,
or is it knit, right, one pass, purl the next?
You knit across, and then you slide the stitches back, and then when you get to the garter section, you purl. So it gives you bicolored purls across that row.
So you can do that with this, but the way you would need to do it is you
would have to knit a stitch and purl
pass it back and purl it.
Right, I got it. It suddenly
pass
clicked.
It back and purl.
Yeah.
Knit stitch, pass it back and purl it. It's very doable.
Right. It's just you might even be able to do it without taking the stitch off. No. You'd have to pass it back.
There's shenanigans.
You can knit backwards that one stitch. You could knit it, and then knit it backwards and slip it back.
Yeah, absolutely.
6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Yeah, so it's the same. So, but it is possible. You're just building up 2 rows of the garter stitch at the same time, building up a full bump rather than 1 row and 1 pass. So yes, you see, this is the thing. The answer is always yes.
This is so fun! Oh my gosh!
We are so geeking out now, aren't we? This is like proper geeking out. Can I show you? A hat design?
Yes. Yes.
I probably shouldn't show this, but I don't care. So this was going to be in a published book. Unfortunately, it got removed from the book last year. But it's. Are you a Harry Potter fan, Suzanne?
A little bit. No, but my grandkids are. So.
So, do you think I might be right to assume that a fair few people in the group watching now might be Harry Potter fans?
Yes.
So they'll be, and you may be familiar with the Marauders map.
Yeah.
The Marauders map is the piece of parchment that when you tap it with your wand and you say the magic words, "I solemnly swear that I'm up to no good," the blueprint of Hogwarts appears in red on the parchment with the footprints in live time of it's like a GPS for everyone at Hogwarts Castle, and you can see their footprints walking across the thing. So this is the Marauders hat.
Oh my goodness! Oh, I love that.
Blueprint. So here's the Hogwarts crest, and here's Dumbledore's office. And round the brim it says Itinerarium Marodentium, which the original map says in its scrolls above the words Marauders map. That's J.K. Rowling's own version of Latin for the Marauders map. It has this very unusual shaped hat, which is the top, which represents the 4 towers, but it's also got these empty corridors. Now, if we all say it together, "I solemnly swear that I am up to no good," and we turn the hat inside out, those empty corridors are now populated with footprints.
Oh my goodness!
Even somebody hiding in the tower who wasn't there before. And it still says, due to the magic of double knitting, Itinerarium Marodentium, round the right way. So and it's got this crazy 4 peaks on the inside as well.
And how much fun did you have making that?
Oh, it's just it just designed itself, really, because the intellectual property is so good, the magic behind it, the idea that you could and even over the top, we've even got some of the footprints that walk over the top of these bumps here, which I really love. So I put my heart and soul into this. So it was sad that it didn't get to go into the book, but I would like to say that's their loss, and I will be releasing this hat pattern very, very soon. It's a lot of fun. The joy of this pattern is, if you don't seam it up at the top the way I have done, it's essentially a cowl.
You're right.
There are There are no increases or decreases anywhere in this hat.
Yeah.
I've just taken a cowl and I've kitchened the top like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's double knitting, you have to do inside and outside, two separate kitchen crafts, and it's in little pieces to get the four arms of it. But if you don't like the idea of increases or decreases in double knitting, there are no crown decreases at all. It's just these tops here are all Kitchener graft in 4 ways.
And you're perfect Kitchenering. Yes, it looks very, very nice. Lovely.
Thank you very much. Thank you. The joy of doing, a lot of people don't realise that because the 2 layers of fabric in double knitting, rather than cast off, usually for a scarf, I will do a Kitchener graft, which just allows the fabric to roll seamlessly from one side to the other.
Right.
Most people will be familiar with doing Kitchener graft at the end of a toe, where your stitches front and back are on 2 separate needles. There's no need to do.
You can do it on one needle.
On one, you can do Kitchener graft on one needle just from wiggling the needle in between some of the stitches. It's really, really easy, and it's nothing to be phased by. So double knitting just makes everything easy.
This is an aside. You know who Priscilla Gibson Roberts is? Have you ever heard of her?
No.
Okay, she is of the previous generation. She's still alive, but she's very elderly. And she's the one that wrote this book, which is a good book to have. Let me see here. Let me get us on here. I don't have me on here. Okay, so, and she really, she's an interesting lady because she was physically incapacitated and could not fly. And her husband was in the service. And so whenever he would go to different countries, he traveled all over, he would bring home artifacts, knitting artifacts, and she would study them. And she did a huge amount of research on knitting and wrote some really interesting books. In one of her books, on one of her sock books, and she's one of the first people to write a sock book. I mean, this is back a ways.
Yeah.
She describes how to do Kitchener stitch on one needle for knit 2, purl 2 ribbing.
Amazing. Amazing.
And it looks perfect.
Fabulous.
She figured that out. You know, she's an engineer too. You know, she was.
It will have the half stitch offset though, won't it?
No, it comes out perfect. I'll show you. I'll make a video of it. That's one of the videos that I want to make.
When you're crafting live stitches together, there's usually that going on.
Well, usually what you do in, let's say you have knit 2, purl 2 ribbing, you would rearrange the stitches, right, into knit 1, purl 1, and then do Kitchener bind off. And it really looks like knit 2, purl 2 bind off, even though you rearrange the stitches because they're coming up knit 2, purl 2. Mm-hmm. They want to be that, so it looks like that. So without rearranging them, she doesn't rearrange any of the stitches. She does the Kitchener, similar to Kitchener on one where you're going behind a stitch and come back through to the front. She does that, only
I see. So she's essentially doing the same thing. She's just working them out of order rather than rearranging them first.
Exactly. Gotcha. She's working them out of order, all on one needle, and it comes out absolutely perfect.
I saw a tutorial recently, and I really wish I could credit the lady because it was brilliant. She had, I'm going to have to re-find it, and it was for Kitchenering varying different types of ribs. So 1x1 rib, 2x1 rib, 3x1 rib, 3x2 rib, and so anything that changes from knit to purl. And it was absolutely brilliant. She said if you've got the 2 layers of fabric, even though if they were like that, you would have them all as knit stitches.
Right.
When they're like this, you've got these are knits and these are showing themselves to you as purls. So where you've got, I can't remember what the actual mnemonic was now, but where you've got...
it depends on the leading leg. Yeah.
It depends on where you've got the 2 stitches which look to be the same. So if you've got a knit stitch backed by a knit stitch, then you go in a certain way and leave it on.
I saw the same thing. I saw the same one. It was very good.
Really, really clever. The mnemonic was same off, different on, or something like that. And it was.
So you could actually Kitchener seed stitch, or you could Kitchener cables with purls in between. You know,
Absolutely.
I want to actually expand on that. That's one of the things I want to work on, and teaching people how to. It's about reading your knitting. It's how to read your knitting.
This is basically I've called Knit Nerdism, but it is essentially really reading your knitting, but not just reading it, getting the microscope to it.
Right. Exactly. You know,
So
getting a
before we go
microscope to
before we
it.
go on the kitchen stitch, can I
Yes,
backtrack
yes,
and
yes,
go
yes.
back to the kitchen stitch? This shawl, which I may as well show now because I want to talk about the kitchener part of it. This is my Hampton Court shawl, which I'm in the process of writing up now. So it is very large, as you can see. It's very green and very blue. It is a triangular shawl, and it's got the spine down the centre, and the two sides mirror each other. But it's also got, along the wingspan and down the centre of the spine here, it's got those are double knitted cables. So the pattern here is all done with increases and decreases, very much like in lace, but with no yarn overs in between them. That's all, just using increases and decreases. And of course, being double knitting, it's just as lovely on the other side, although the cables you can see there are very, very different. Now, interestingly, because it's 2 layers of fabric, it is closed at the end with a Kitchener graft. Now, it's a long Kitchener graft. There's 1,000 odd stitches here, but it is a Kitchener graft. However, as you can see, the end of this section, the stitches are green.
Right.
And then here, they're blue. I decided to ignore the individual stitches here. So I wanted to have a section where the green Kitchener was at the front here, but the blue here, which then when we get to the centre, also had to change back to green there.
Right.
And this was a head scratcher because you can see all the colours are reversed on the other side, but the blue does go to the end and the green does go to the end.
Right.
But getting that, because for anyone who doesn't know, if you're Kitchenering 2 sides of double knitting together, Kitchener itself builds 1 extra row of stitches. So because we didn't want, if you end like this, if you Kitchener, you'd have 1 that would come up.
So you can't do that last row of the one side.
So what you do is you build up an extra row of purl stitches across the back by slipping the front stitches and purling the back stitches with 1 colour. So you do it in 2 passes. So you do that, but then if you're working the 2 passes separately, how on earth was I going to account for the colour changes? So I was thinking, well, maybe I could do the 2 passes for the little short section, switch the colours over, and then do that. And I was like, I can never write this up. I would know I could do it in my home, but to write it up in words that other people could understand and put it on a page that wasn't a thesis,
that's where you have to make a video of a little piece of it. You know?
But actually, I discovered another way. So with the first colour, so let's call it the blue, I started the purling for that 5 stitches down the centre. So I slipped the knit, purled the blue, slipped the knit, purled the blue, slipped the knit, purled the blue, slipped the knit, purled the blue. Then where the colour changes, I just knit the blue, slip the back, knit the blue, slip the back. So I built up the entire row in one go, using the colour I wanted where it would show. Then I took a chance and it really paid off, and I was so excited when this happened. I then slipped all the stitches, so I did the whole row like that, working some of the stitches on the back and then some of them on the front and some on the back, leaving all the others done. Then when I got to the Kitchener, I just Kitchenered all the bits that I hadn't done before, and it automatically evens itself out, and they fall to the back and these come to the front and they fall to the back. It's so simple. And I was working on that for weeks, and I hadn't ended the school. I just couldn't do it. And then literally I just went, well, what if I just build it up where I want to? And it's like almost like a little chicane thing, you know, like in a velodrome where you go around the corners, they build up the side so you can go around the corner. Well, the Kitchener will follow that line and go where it needs to, and it'll just fall into the right places. It's amazing. And there we are. And it's a big shawl, and it's lovely, and it's made. So going back to the earlier question, yes, this is worsted weight yarn, and it's double thickness, and it's merino, baby alpaca, and silk. It's the warmest thing in the world. It may not be if you live in hot climes for you, but it is so delicious and gorgeous, and it weighs 1 kilogram, and I love it.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Okay, so we left any stones unturned?
Yes, 1. Okay. I want to talk to you about that decrease that I mentioned earlier.
Yes, and also, we want to talk about your YouTube video, your YouTube channel. You have a YouTube channel, and you do podcasts. And
I do.
people can subscribe to your channel and watch your podcasts.
So if people haven't come across me before, because I know you've got a very large following here, so there's many people probably watching today or in the future who haven't come across my work yet. I'm Sockmatician. It's Sockmatician everywhere. So I'm Sockmatician on Instagram, I'm Sockmatician on YouTube, and my website is sockmatician.com. And the YouTube channel, I have lots of things. Like you, I really enjoy doing tutorials, and I haven't actually done a tutorial for ages because I've sort of done the techniques that I felt I needed to fill in the blanks for my own patterns, and now I can just link back to tutorials I've already made. But there will be tutorials that go with the book. Initially, I'm hoping there'll be private links just for the people who have the book, but ultimately they'll be open to everybody because I want to encourage so many people to learn the joys of double knitted brioche. But I have a podcast. I podcast once every 1 or 2 weeks. It tends to be about an hour long, an hour to an hour and 15 minutes long, me burbling about this kind of stuff. And outside my knitting world, I do lots of other things as well. So I talk about stuff which I hope other people find interesting. I'm an actor. I work in musical theatre. I've been in 8 West End shows, the original cast of Mary Poppins, the original London cast of Spamalot, the Rocky Horror Show, Les Miserables and Miss Saigon, all manner of things. I've done all that kind of stuff, and I'm always doing concerts and singing gigs and traveling the world doing that kind of stuff as well. So I'm the luckiest man on this planet. I make a living out of singing and knitting.
And you know what? We are so lucky to be able to enjoy you.
Thank you.
Seriously. So
Thank you.
This lady up here, Diane, she said, "Thank you, Suzanne, for interviewing Nathan." And Nathan, I am so glad you are back doing what you are so brilliant at doing.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you very much.
As Maxie says, how do you make your edge transitions so neat? Thank you for sharing your amazing work with us. Absolutely love your work. I'm a longtime fan, and I'm so glad to see you back.
Thank you.
Edge transitions.
The edges on double knitting like this, do you mean on the edges? Because they are lovely and neat and tidy.
And you have a video. You have a video that shows how to do that.
It's called the slip stitch edge. I mean, Suzanne and I were talking about this the other day, where you favour not doing a slip stitch edge. I happen to favour a slip stitch edge. And isn't it brilliant that we can both find the things that we love and the things that make our knitting work for us? There's no, I don't think there's a better way, one than the other. You prefer that way, I prefer this way. Mine's called the slip stitch edge. Do you have a tutorial of your way?
Yes. Yes.
So yeah,
there you
can find.
Yeah.
Choose both and pick whichever one suits you best.
And try them. Try them both and see what you like. So Absolutely. Now I see a couple more things back there. Oh, your decrease. Yes.
So decreases. When we're talking single decreases, and this is not a double knitted hat. This is an ordinary hat. It's a very nice hat. It's a very pretty hat with a little bit of directional stuff going on there.
Right.
Very nice. It's a doubled over cuff. So I did a lazy provisional cast on, whereas basically it's like an Italian cast on, and I just picked up the stitches and knitted into them like a big welt. So that's sort of a hollow cuff, which is very nice. So it looks like a turned up cuff, but it won't turn down. But then into the hat itself. When you are doing a single decrease, and by a single decrease I mean any decrease that decreases your stitch count by 1 stitch, you tend to only have 2 options, a left-leaning or a right-leaning decrease. That's it, right? There are various ways that you can achieve those things, but it's going to be a left-leaning decrease, which is the knit 2 together. Sorry, a right-leaning decrease for the knit 2 together, and the left-leaning, which will either be the SSK or the amended SSK, which I don't advocate at all because it's not symmetrical to the knit 2 together. But don't get me started on that. It's as divisive as the Oxford comma, or you can do the slip 1, knit 1, pass 1 over. But it's going to be a left-leaning or a right-leaning decrease. Would you say that that's the only options? You have to lean one way or the other for a single decrease?
No, there is a way that you can make it go up the center. And I've seen it, but I can't tell you how to do it at the moment.
So the way this was brilliant. My favourite classes to teach are the ones where I learn something from my students. Absolutely 100%. And I was teaching at Vogue Knitting Live in San Francisco the year before last, and I was teaching my advanced double knitting class. Was it? Maybe it was. No, it was Knit Nerdism. It was my Knit Nerdism class. It was one of the first times I premiered the class, and it was a room full of brilliant knit nerds just like you and me, and we were having a wonderful time. And there were two girls, particularly Lexi and Simka, who stayed behind because they didn't know each other. They both wanted to ask me separate questions in my lunch break, and I always love to chat after class and get to know people that I haven't had a chance to meet properly during the class itself. And the three of us, started really geeking out, like properly geeking out, to the point where we started discussing theoretical decreases and wondering if there might be a way to actually create in life a theoretical decrease. And one of the things that I had been pondering for a while, and the three of us, we worked it out together, and it literally was teamwork. We all went, well, if you do this, no, it's not going to work, but oh, do that, but go under there. And literally we were helping each other out, always guiding each other's needles. What we discovered was a single decrease doesn't have to be 2 into 1. It can be 3 into 2.
Oh, yes.
And that suddenly means you've got 3 stitches, and above them sit 2. And it's not going to lean left or right. It's going to be perfectly symmetrical. And then we thought, well, how do we do it? And actually, it's the only thing that can't be done. You know, the centered double decrease, you get this, if you stack them on top of each other, you get this beautiful, proud column of stitches that stands off the knitting. I always like to joke, I think this beautiful, erect, tall column of stitches, it's the most male of decreases. It stands there full of pride. And what does pride come before? A fall. And what could be more male than that? But whereas with this one, because it's 3 stitches with 2 above, in order to make another one in the next row, you're going to have to take another one from that side or another one from that side to get the 3. So you can't actually stack them on top of each other, but you can bounce them backwards and forwards like that as you go up. And if you do that, what you get is this.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yes.
Isn't that gorgeous?
I love it.
So that's I just turned you up louder than I need to for feedback. So that's what happens there. So what I've done with this one is this is a single decrease here, and I've just set that with some increases so that you can have the stitch columns go in different directions. That's for the decoration. But then when I wanted to start with the crown, I just stopped doing the increases and let the decreases carry on. The effect of that is really unusual in a hat crown. Usually the decreases will spiral round one way or the other. Right. And you get the hat that does a vortex like a galaxy. They go straight up. It's in like the spokes of a wheel. Look at that.
Yes. I love that.
Usual is that.
That's very
and it's
cool.
the same braid of decreases which start being decoration and then become shaping all the way through. And I absolutely love it. So we were convinced that we had the new gift for the knitting world, and we even gave it a name. We called it the Al-Nasi decrease, A-L-N-A-S-I, because it's Alexa, Nathan, and Simca. It's the first 2 letters of all of our names. And we were determined that we were going to unleash this, which is why I designed the hat.
And do you have it written down somewhere or a video of it?
Not yet, because we then went home and found that it does already exist.
Oh, okay.
But as far as I know, there's only 2 videos on the whole of YouTube, and that's nowadays that where someone's showing it. There are 2 versions of it. There's what I call the inside version, the outside version. And if you want me to very quickly tell you how it works for people who have the kind of visual brain who can take it from the words, it's really simple. So if you've got stitches 1, 2, and 3 on your needle, into stitches 1 and 2, you do a standard knit 2 together. But instead of slipping both of the old stitches off, you just slip one of them off, and then using that stitch again with the 3rd stitch, you then do an SSK.
Oh.
So you're using the middle stitch twice.
Right. And that's what holds it in the center.
Yeah. So it looks like a large stitch with 2 separate stitches coming out of it, which is amazing. But that's one version. You can also do the other version, which is to SSK first, slip one of the stitches off, remount the other one, and then knit 2 together into stitches 2 and 3. So you can, and one of them is decorative like that. The other one is almost invisible. It's literally like
well, I like the
one.
design that is on your hat. It's very
I
dimensional.
It looks
I
like a
like
little
it.
cable braid or something like that. But
Right.
if you wanted to just magic away a stitch just to change the numbers for some reason, it
Right.
wasn't decorative. If you do it the invisible way, it just looks like one column of stitches disappears behind the others.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't look like the angle
Right.
of a leaning decrease at all. I think it's magical,
It's
and I
like an
can't.
inverted central double decrease, only you're just getting rid of one stitch instead of two.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
except of course you've got the other two coming next to each other
Right. So
rather
a
than
central
crossing.
double decrease, you end up with this one on the top, and you're doing this.
Yes, but again, it's only a single decrease, so they're
Right.
not. They're not.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh,
Exactly.
it's brilliant, and it's so easy, and the flow of it is so easy to
Very
work.
cool.
I can't believe that knitters don't know about it.
Okay,
Just
so
goes to
we've
show
been on
you.
here for an hour and 40 minutes, and it has been a blast. It went like that. Let's see what else. Okay.
Lots of different textures. Some
Oh,
of this is
yes.
double knitting, some of it's double knitting, some of it is the different colours of double knitted brioche going yellow and green there, and some of it's double knitted lace, and something is this texture here, which I absolutely love, which I've called Chris Stitch in honour of a lady who accidentally did it in one of my classes, and I liked it so much I've designed a whole scarf around it. It's kind of like a double knitted linen stitch in 2 colours.
Wow. And
So,
now these are all in your new book that's coming out, right?
this one, I don't think I can because it's got a very small amount of double knitted brioche.
Okay.
It's other techniques. So I'm saving this one until after the book is released. There will be 11 patterns in the book, which is quite a lot for a technique book, but I wanted it to be worthwhile people learning to know
Right.
how to do it.
Right.
So I to give them some patterns up front. But I'm going to be expanding on this repertoire as much as I possibly can over the next few years and bringing much more. And I really hope that it doesn't stay mine. I really hope that other designers are going to go, I love that, and I've got this idea. And so other people will start doing it, and really the hive mind of the knitting world will make it into something much more than I ever could. And that's my hope for it.
That's awesome. Well, that's how I feel about teaching knitting, because right now I do most of my teaching through YouTube, you know,
Yes.
and it's not like somebody's paying me to take a class or anything. And I think some people don't like that idea, you know, because it's like I'm giving it away for free. But you know what? So much comes back to me from that it's not really free, and I get so much other in return for it. So it's my love of knitting. I want to share it. I want other people to be able to love it as much as I do.
And I'm exactly the same. It's why I teach. Knitting shouldn't be proprietorial. If I were being proprietorial about this, a lot of people who don't really understand say, "Oh, you should trademark that." It's like, no, it's a technique. You can't stop people from doing things with yarn
it will
and
just
string.
die when you die. Then
I want this. I want this to be my legacy. This is my gift to the world. Yes, I'm going to make some money out of it because I'm spending a lot of work doing it, and I need to eat. I need to pay the bills.
right.
But I really want other people to take it from me and add to it and build upon it in ways that I would never have thought of.
Exactly. Very cool.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. It has been when you contacted me, I knew who you were through your tutorials, and I have long recognized in you a mind that works similarly geekily nerdily to mine.
Yes, I know. It's like the first time we talked, that first time we Skyped, it's like, oh my God, I need to live by this guy. I mean, it's like, because we could talk forever about the little nuances of knitting.
Just proved that.
You could just go forever and ever, and it's so invigorating. It's so, because it's your soul. It's what's in here, So, well, it's going to be time to close here. Now, I want to say, people can find you on Instagram, right? And you have your YouTube, and you have a web page, Sockmatician, and you have your book coming out. And someone asked if you were going. Oh, Scott Tigner asked if you were going to be teaching at Vogue Knitting Live this year.
I don't have any current plans to do any public events like that because of some problems I was having last year. So I've shied away from that for a bit. I think as attitudes and tides change back towards more liberal thinking, I hope.
But you would do retreats and stuff, wouldn't you? I mean, if people invited you to do private retreats and,
And private as well. Like yesterday's class was a private class that's hosted at someone's house. I'm very, very open for that. And I should plug, otherwise my sister will kill me. I have my own range of yarn. I have the Sockmatician edition range of yarn. It's going to crinkle. It comes in these beautiful colours here. This is the DK weight range. It's also available in 4-ply. They are 8 colours. 8 colours of the original Pride Rainbow flag. So that's pink, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, turquoise and purple, plus a dark grey and a light grey, and the fibre is merino, alpaca and New Zealand possum. So it's incredibly warm, incredibly soft. Each one of these balls is like a little guinea pig. They're absolutely delicious. Yes. And most of the stuff I'm knitting at the moment is in my own yarn range. So that's the plug.
And so they would find that yarn on your Sockmatician webpage. You have a link to your yarn there, right?
Sockmatician.com.
And then you also have, do you have a link on your webpage to this book? Let's see.
You can buy, yes, you can buy the book through me. So yes, you can buy it on Amazon or you can buy it through Hanes.com. But if you buy it through me, it will be a little bit more expensive, but I can offer you a signed copy by the author. I've also got my own little enamel pins for your project bags if you want to buy those as well.
Yes, yes. So I just want to tell you, you're the most delightful person. This is just so fun. To me, this is what knitting is about.
Yes, me too. That's what I'm all about, is about sharing this and having a good time with like-minded people.
And the enthusiasm and the love. Yeah. Thank you. So, maybe we could do this again in another year after your book has come out, and we can see what you're doing at that time, and we'll do more.
Thank you. If I may quickly just add as well, the other thing that I do very for people who don't know me is I'm a man living with HIV, and I'm very passionate about spreading the word about the facts of HIV today. Here's my little ribbon here. And I've recently put out a video on my YouTube channel called My HIV Story, and it takes the form of a conversation between me and my 14-year-old self. It really, really comes from the heart, but there's a lot of really, really useful information. So if anybody's interested in that kind of thing, head over to YouTube and look for My HIV Story and check it out, and take some tissues because you might need them.
Yes. Now, I also want to say, for people who didn't get a chance to watch this live, if you do want to ask questions, you can still ask questions when the video is static on YouTube. And I do check the questions. And if there's something that you address directly to Nathan, I can let him know, and he can get on there and answer it. But I do keep up with the videos once they're on YouTube, and will answer your questions as the best I can. Also, if you enjoy this, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Give me a thumbs up. If you subscribe, there's a little red button down there, and you hit subscribe. And then there's a little bell next to it. If the bell looks like it's vibrating, that means you will get notifications when a new video is going to come up. If the bell is not vibrating, you need to click on it, so that you'll get notified of the next live stream that's going to come up. If you've done all that and you still don't get notifications, check your phone or your iPad or your computer to make sure that you're allowing to get notifications from YouTube, because you may have accidentally turned that off.
Don't forget to mention your other channel as well, with all your tutorials and fabulous things.
Yes, so I have 2 channels. This channel is just specifically for the live streams, and this is my baby channel. It just really started recently. My other channel, and this one's called Suzanne Off the Cuff, so it's just conversations. It's just talking. And the other channel is called Knitting with Suzanne Bryan, and you only get to see my hands on that channel, and I show specific knitting techniques, and I pride myself in providing short, quick tutorials with all the information that you need to learn a specific skill. I try not to chit-chat. I don't talk about my cat or my neighbor or the weather. I say, I'm going to show you how to do a yarn over. This is how you do a yarn over. and this is what you might not want to do, or if it works out this way, try this, and I tell you the pitfalls and then that's it. So
And
you
I
can.
can heartily recommend Suzanne's tutorials to anyone who may not have seen them before. Suzanne, here's my chance to thank you for what you give the knitting community, because you are a certified master knitter. Am I right in thinking that you helped put together that whole program?
Yeah,
You're not
yeah.
just so you are the master of the master knitters.
I
And
know.
if you need to learn from somebody, you
Yeah.
can't go wrong with learning from somebody
I
like
was an
Suzanne.
engineer in my previous life. In my real life, I was in the medical field, but my brain is an engineering brain. That's why knitting appeals to me. So we'll do this again in a year. I think it'll be a lot of fun, and I hope to see you live in person at some point.
Yes, me
So we're
too,
going to
very much.
say goodbye. Nathan, don't hang up quite yet. We're going to say goodbye. We'll see you all next time. Happy knitting.